I've played tons of Super Nintendo games, and throughout time, I've experienced some really gnarly boss fights, games that made me break controllers, that made me take a walk around my neighborhood, and even as an adult, I struggled with some of the bosses you'll see in today's episode, because that's what it's about, my top 10 hardest Super Nintendo bosses out there. Now it goes without saying, but I am talking about bosses of games that you may or may not have played, so spoiler alert. But if you're okay with that, then stick around. Let's begin. Mortal Kombat has always been a big deal to me. In fact, it was my earliest experience when it came to fighting games. A lot of you likely remember Street Fighter 2 or Primal Rage or Fatal Fury, but for me, it was always Mortal Kombat. Now granted, when I was a kid, I don't remember much about playing single player because it was usually me versus my dad, and I was still very much shitting my diapers. But if we fast forward the timer a little bit, I've had the pleasure to experience the absolute frustration that is the home ports of early Mortal Kombat games. Games with abhorrently broken AI, and a difficulty slider that doesn't give a fuck what you think, and at the end of it all, bosses that invert your soul and put your dick through a meat grinder. Now for me, the worst of the worst was Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 3. He's not just hard, he's straight up bullshit. He's a sentient wall programmed to ruin your weekend. As with most computer-controlled players, he reads your inputs like he's in the room staring at your controller, and no matter what you do, he'll respond instantaneously. The difficulty slider in this game, it's a placebo. Very easy means that you get a few more milliseconds to do something before he laughs at you, tells you you suck, and kicks your ass. If you've watched my previous episodes concerning the Super Nintendo, you'll know that in my opinion, one of the greatest sleeper hits on the console is Hagane: The Final Conflict. Hagane is a blend of Mega Man X, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and Shinobi wrapped into one fluid, ass-kicking action platformer from hell. It is a very difficult game, and a very rewarding one to conquer. Most bosses in this game are unique, but one of the cooler aspects is that they can be one-shot in most cases if you master the art of the attack somersault. I can't explain how to do it without cracking a manual open, but if you play it for yourself, you'll see what I mean. The final boss though, that's a test of all the skills you've learned through the game. Amana Ikazuchi is a massive fucking Satan missile that's slowly launching. We need to get to the top while dodging fireballs and take out all of these weird faces, and it might look easy, but trust me, it isn't. I knew I would be talking about this fucking game again. I hate Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It's one of the most fundamentally frustrating games I've ever played, and you know what? It's fun. Fuck it. It's a fun game. But the idea that we need to get through this in one sitting, it's incredibly frustrating to me. For those of you who don't know, you can get all the passwords you want to save your progress, but the downside to that is that you lose all of the weapons and enhancements you've picked up in the game. It's a real slap to the nutsack. So you have to literally play what I would consider a perfect game, using weapons only when you need them, and struggle to get through the 48 main levels, finding your neighbors and dealing with some grossly unfair enemies before you get to the big bad evil guy himself, Dr. Tongue. Dr. Tongue is the stuff of B-movie nightmares. He begins the fight as a gigantic tarantula that has no predictable pattern, and he shits an incomprehensible amount of projectiles at you. Then he has a phase 2 where he's like a floating disembodied head that uses his tongue to lash out at you, and to me he's a bullet sponge. And you know what? If you made it this far, props to you. It's an accomplishment, but fuck man, that boss sucks. Dracula has always been the big bad evil guy of Castlevania games, at least for the ones I've played to date, and every iteration of him has been fun to fight. The original Dracula teleports around, then he turns into this weird fucking Wolfman bat thing, and in Castlevania 2, he's kind of a pushover. Castlevania 3 has a pretty gnarly Dracula, as does Castlevania 4, but the one that I think takes the cake is Dracula from Dracula X. For anyone who doesn't know, Dracula X is a step down, at least to some capacity, of Rondo of Blood. Now, I've played Rondo, but I've never played Dracula X, but I do know one thing. Dracula X, fundamentally, is eons more difficult than Rondo, and as such, so is the final boss. The first phase is normal, right? Standing up to Dracula while he poops out fireballs all over the screen, trying to hit this tiny window of opportunity. Then Dracula says, "Fuck this," and turns into a big-ass gargoyle flying death ray machine thing. I don't know, it's just a big Dracula bat thing. Shoots blue waves at you. And guess what? One missed jump or one bad dodge, you're fucked. It's a masterclass on how to kick your consumer's ass. I loved Street Fighter 2. It was a very important game to me growing up, because when I became sentient, that is to say I looked down and realized I had a wiener, it was then I understood. I had hands, and those hands could hold a controller, and I could play games my way, trying my best. Street Fighter 2 with my cousin was a normal occurrence during my summers growing up, and I would make it to M. Bison all the time just to get my shit kicked in. M. Bison is the litmus test for if you're ready to take on the next star level of difficulty. He'll read your inputs, double knee your pancreas in a syrup, put you in a corner and punish you with non-stop scissor kicks, and should you try to stand and breathe, no thank you. He'll fly across the screen with his psycho powers. It always felt to me like he was performing 2 frames ahead of you at any given time, and I don't know the science behind it because I'm not a programmer, but I do feel him and Shao Kahn would get along, at least if the conversation included reading their opponent's moves. Contra has always been a difficult franchise. For many of you younger kids that want to say, From Software has hard games. Okay, bro. Okay, try Battletoads. No? Shut the fuck up then. Contra 1 was epic, Super Contra was super epic, and here we are with Contra 3 on the Super Nintendo, known as Contra 3: The Alien Wars. A game with 6 stages that felt like an eternity because you're constantly at arms with the enemies. This is one of the hardest games on the Super Nintendo, period. Now there's tons of badass bosses you'll encounter during those 6 stages. The final boss is the 6-men Pharaohdomos, and while that boss is a challenge, to me, the hardest boss in the game is actually the entire closing sequence of level 4. Now we know the boss's name is Dodriguez, right? It's a massive flying battleship, but during the end, you'll have to hold on to horizontal missiles while shooting at him. It's gnarly as fuck. I think the missile mechanic is way harder than the actual fight with the battleship, but at the end of the day, it's still an awesome fight. Before we get into the final 5, I do want to say that as of today, only 39.7% of the viewers watching my videos are subscribed, which is great because it means my videos are going out to a larger audience. But I do wish to grow this community even more than it was yesterday, and I'd love to reach 9,000 subscribers with you. If you like what you see or have any nostalgia for these wonderful games, feel free to subscribe. Let's get back into the action though. You all know Metroid, right? Yeah, you do. You all constantly remind me that I need to play Super Metroid, and at some point I will, but today is not that day. If you've played Metroid before, you know there are some bosses, of which to me really aren't that hard in the grand scheme of the game. Ridley and Kraid are both pushovers, but Super Metroid? Brother, that's a different ballgame. It's Metroid on steroids, and with it, some of the most badass boss encounters you'll see. If you've played this, you know by the time you reach Ridley, you're likely starved of everything you need offensively, and Ridley by design is there to take every iota of patience that you have left. He's in your face, he dive bombs you relentlessly, and he's erratic. Even by having an E-tank, it's 100% a fight of attrition. Do you have the patience and the skills to take down this time-cherished nightmare? You know, there's some bosses that are tough because they hit hard, you know, they do a lot of damage. Some are tricky, you don't know where they're going to land, and then you have Gygus, where the game straight up says you cannot grasp the true form of Gygus' attack. That's fucking heavy metal shit right there. And what's so funny is that by the time you get to this point in Earthbound, you think you've kind of seen it all, right? Robots, aliens, Starman Deluxe, whatever the fuck that guy is, and then you find it. The idea of Gygas, a swirling, screaming distortion of evil. When you fight him, you'll notice his attacks are not predictable. They're all over the place, abstract like he is, impossible to comprehend as the narrative dictates, and they will shred your HP to pieces. Plus, you get to see Pokey's dumbass again, and he'll gladly tell you how fucked you are. You can't brute force this one, and I won't spoil what you need to do to beat him, because it is a very major plot point. But when you conquer this fight, you'll be proud of yourself for beating one of the most esoteric games on the Super Nintendo. You ever play a game so hard that finally reaching the final boss feels like you've just climbed Mount Everest butt-ass naked and without the help of supplemental oxygen? That's what Super Ghouls and Ghosts is. It's a nightmare, and at the end of the nightmare is Sardius, or Lucifer, or Samael, whatever you want to call him. And because it's Super Ghouls and Ghosts, you already know you need to fight him twice, which means engaging in this Sisyphean bullshit that this game is, a constant uphill battle of nonsense from a developer that couldn't give a fuck about your feelings. You beat him the first time, and then after the second loop, you can get the goddess bracelet and start fighting him. You stand on this little tiny platform of death using a weapon that's about as effective as putting out a fire with a gas can, struggling to hit Sardius, who can kill you in one hit, because that's the design of the game. Now, if you're good, you'll have 2 hits to keep you alive, maybe 3 if you have the special armor, but that armor goes quick. One wrong jump, one bad move, you die, and you're redoing the final stage all over again. Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest games ever created. In fact, to me, between Final Fantasy III and Chrono Trigger, they can both share a spot for the best games I've ever played, as well as the best games on the Super Nintendo, period dot. And I'll die on that hill. Chrono Trigger was the result of so many pioneers of the industry and the JRPG concept coming together to create something perfect. Music by Yasunori Mitsuda under the tutelage of Nobuo Uematsu. Masato Kato's storyline and dialogue with assistance from Yuji Horii. Akira Toriyama's artwork that you can recognize a mile away, and the legendary designer that pulled it all together, Hironobu Sakaguchi. And from start to finish, every second of the game is accounted for, every emotion checked. It's the perfect video game. But at the end, we face the threat we hear about so often in the story, Lavos. And Lavos is a very difficult boss because he's dirty. He's the final exam you've been studying for the whole game, and he still throws questions at you in the form of magic unlike you have ever seen before. He transforms into past bosses and hits you with their magic. He can counter moves, and he can one-shot you. Even if you are at the max level, one bad string of choices from you can end it all. And don't forget, the whole process to fight Lavos is a gauntlet, so you have to bring your A game. He demands it. Super Mario RPG is a game that I have been dying to play. After all, it was the first Mario-based RPG, and it opened the door for more of them. Think Paper Mario, as well as the Mario and Luigi series. Hell, we even got a remake in 2023, and people loved it. But what boss from a Mario game could be the hardest? Well, one thing to remember is that this wasn't Nintendo that developed it. It was Square, and throughout history, Square has been 100% fine with putting in secret bosses that test every skill you have, and equally test the patience that you have. If you've played this before, you know that the final boss is Smithy, but he's kind of a pushover, and to many people, they didn't even realize he was the final boss. But there's another boss in this game that will shit on your face, and he can be found in Monstro Town behind a sealed door, and his name is Culex. Culex is the quintessential you aren't supposed to win this fight kind of encounter. He is the embodiment of what Square would put as a secret boss in a game. He has 4 crystals full of hatred that each sling magic your way that can decimate you. And hey, also by the way, they heal each other, and they each have a biblically annoying amount of HP. It's one of those marathon battles where one wrong move can and will make 30 minutes of your life be wasted. And even if you were max level in the game, it can feel like swinging a pool noodle at a brick wall. It's a solid fight, hard one. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? What are your top 10 hardest Super Nintendo bosses in your opinion? Feel free to let the community know down in the comments section below. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home with us. We're a gathering of video game enthusiasts that love to remember when life was just a little bit easier to live, and if you align with that, feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly affects the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.